welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts, and hope everyone feels really well that the election cycle is over with. You can now pick up a phone and have a real person, not some robocall or someone saying, I'm Charlie Bass or I'm Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Mitt Romney. The election is done and over with, but but now everyone's talking about the great fiscal cliff as if it was something that was just popping up or unexpectedly. And everyone's talking about how important it is that we deal with it, how we have to fix it. Some of the TV news shows have a time clock as if it's a countdown to execution or countdown to midnight or a countdown to the New Year's. And if the fiscal cliff is so important, so urgent that it's going to affect the country, why did Congress leave this week to go on vacation? Well, they said, no, it's not vacation. It's a Thanksgiving recess, and one of the congressmen from Washington, I think it was Representative Adam Smith, he says, well, you know, we do get to go to visit schools and we've talked to people. When we go back home, we're not on a break. We're working. Well, but part of being a leader is prioritizing. What is the greatest priority right now? If we say the great priority right now is dealing with the fiscal problems of the United States, why do you determine that it's more important to go home and visit people back home instead of dealing with the events that will have a much greater effect on them? And but we're going, nope, it's more important that we go home. Well, you know, they got to go home, they got to visit people, they got to visit their family. It's the holiday spirit, the season, the whole works. But you know, I don't think they'd say that to the men and women that are in Afghanistan. You know, you have more important job to do. You can miss being Thanksgiving with your family. You can miss the births of your children. You can miss this because this is much more important. You have to do something for the greater good. You must stay here. You must protect the United States. But these same people will not apply that standard to themselves. The greater good, their greater good is, some of them are already going back and raising money, going to fundraisers for the next election cycle. And they haven't even been sworn in for this after this election. But that's our politics, that's the way it goes. But you sit there and you look, and even now in Congress, the big thing is with General Petraeus, and General Petraeus having an affair. It's amazing how Congress and our senators can always find some reason or to deflect from the major problem. The major problem is that we're going to reach our debt limit in a matter of weeks. The Secretary of Treasury, Timothy Geithner, says, hey, I can do some fancy bookkeeping and everything, and I can keep it going past January, maybe into the middle of January. And, you know, that's what's been getting the government in trouble. It's all this fancy bookkeeping. You know what? You either have the money or you don't have the money. Plain and simple. Or we're going in and saying, hey, you know what? We're going to have to cut funding to school, to education. We're going to have to cut funds to roads. We're going to have to make these different cuts. Yes, we're going to have to come up with $1.2 trillion worth of cuts for the next 10 years. And of course, we all know mostly all those cuts are going to be from projected growth. So it's not actually real cut spending, but that's the way government does it. 1.2 trillion. They're talking about 1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. And we're talking over 1 trillion in debt this year alone, new debt in this year alone. So basically, yes, it is so hard for us to solve 10% of the problem. We cannot come up with a deal for 10% of the problem. So the best that we can hope for is they'll solve it for this year, or they'll kick it down the road for this year. And then come around November, when we get ready for the next budget, they'll go, well, you know what? Congress is up for re-election, and we're going to have to wait until after the election. Not good. But still, we want to know what Petraeus knew, when he knew. We want to know about Petraeus' girlfriend. Did she write the book? Did someone else write the book? Did she ever write before? What's the relationship between her and the other one? Is it a soap opera? Is you stay away from my man, and wait a minute, how are you staying away from my man if your man belongs to someone else? And in the meantime, it goes, General Petraeus says, this is the report I sent. We don't know who changed the words. This is what Secretary Rice said was quite different than, or Ambassador Rice said was quite different than what I wrote. But now we don't know who changed the words. We don't know when the president knew, when the vice president knew. And we have the FBI investigating and interviewing the director of the CIA, and then the director of the CIA's boss, who happens to be the same boss of the FBI, didn't know that the FBI was investigating the director of the CIA, and because he works for the president, he didn't bother telling the president or anybody in the White House or whatever. I don't know who didn't know, or whatever, but all it is, it's really a big distraction. And it is. It's unbelievably big distraction. We have Israel calling up 75,000 reservists, getting at the possibility of going into a ground war in the Gaza Strip, which then could really put them on edge with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. We have Lebanon going back and forth. We've got Syria, 30 to 40,000 people have been killed in Syria in the past 18 months. We've got the problem in Libya. We've got the buildup in Afghanistan because they know in approximately about 18 months, basically mostly all the combat troops will be out of Afghanistan. Then we have Iran. Iran went down and shot at an unarmed drone. We were told it's unarmed drone in international airspace by its border. Turkey's firing into Syria. Syria's firing into Turkey. Tens of thousands of people are going across the border into Turkey. We're getting into the nasty part of the winter over there. Could be humanitarian disaster. And the Syrian tanks have gone into the Golan Heights, which is part of Syria, but it's a demilitarized zone. Israel is doing everything possible to keep Syrians from coming into the Golan Heights or into Israel because they don't want to handle the refugees. Iraq, we don't know what's going on in Iraq. More and more bombings all the time. And so it's one of those, you don't worry about history now, even though we have all these people writing books and everything, telling about everything that happens historic. 20, 30, 40 years from now, people are going to go, historians are going to look back at, and I think they're going to say the United States made two major blunders that it's going to have a big effect on us. And we went into Iraq. Saddam Hussein was a bully. He was a mass murderer. But the problem was he kept Iran under control. Okay, when we took out Saddam Hussein and we spent 8 years, over $1 trillion, about 6,000 men and women lost their lives. Plain and simple, American lives, American fiscal treasure. Now, Iran is building up. Are they going to get a nuclear weapon? We don't know. Afghanistan, 11 years, the longest war that we've ever fought in. And basically, we've already said in 18 months, we're leaving. Win, lose, or draw, we're leaving. Another $1 trillion. And some people have said another $600 billion to another $1 trillion just to take care of the disabled veterans and stuff. So just think, you can look at that, $3 trillion. $2 trillion of it already is in our debt because of the wars, and it's going on. And now then we had the Arab Spring. I think in the United States, we blew the Arab Spring. And so when you look at the Middle East, you look at Northern Africa, the Horn of Africa, basically it may end up being the biggest winner may be the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda. They're having a good time. They're draining us. They're draining our treasure. They're draining our money. They're draining our time. And just think, every time we fire a cruise missile at, say, $600,000, plain and simple, you can easily say 600,000. That's 7 to 8 school teachers. Bingo, gone. And so when you shoot a missile downrange, we get nothing in return. So that's politics up at the federal level. Don't concentrate on any of the important things. Just concentrate on some of our retired generals, the former generals' sex lives and their girlfriends, and that's what the American people want. It may not be what they need, but that's what the American people want. At the state level, I went up to the Democratic caucus this Saturday, and Terry Norelli was nominated to be the Democratic choice for Speaker, and she overwhelmingly beat Dave Campbell. I think it was something like about 128 to 73. And when I was up there in the caucus, as I stood there and I observed and I listened, and you could go and say, hey, why did you run? Says, the only reason I ran is because I hated Bill O'Brien. I hated O'Brien. I hated O'Brien. And other ones say, you know what, I'm up here to undo everything O'Brien did. And yep, and other people go, oh, yep, it's good to be back, it's good to be back. And I just got a funny and I got a really queasy feeling, and I'm saying, you know, this isn't starting out very good for the people of New Hampshire. It's not O'Brien's house, it's not Norelli's house, it's not Gene Chandler's house, it's supposed to be our house, the people's house. So the Democrats go and renominate Norelli, then the Republicans go pick Gene Chandler as their leader. Well, Gene Chandler was the one who was convicted for having those corn roasts where he was raising tens of thousands of dollars each year and using them to pay for a lot of his expenses. He was censured by the House and almost was expelled by the House, and he had to pay a $2,000 fine, and now he's the Republican leader of the House. But the part that that's getting me is the total disconnect that the majority of the House has with the people of New Hampshire. And right here, we'll pick on the Democrats. This is the Democratic, except for Eli over here for sheriff. These 21 people were the Democrats' nominees for candidates for the State House. All 21 of these candidates won. So right now, as far as the Democrats concerned and Cheshire County is concerned, there's 21 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I think the last 2 Republicans are Susan Emerson and Jim Hunt, and no one ran against them. And so basically, it's an all Democratic slate. But the part is, when I'm talking about the disconnect, the majority of these candidates are on Social Security. A number of them are in their 70s. Some are even in their 80s. And you can go and say, what does that have to do with us? Well, when I was at the Democratic caucus and I was looking around the caucus, and I was saying to myself, wow, a lot of these people, newly elected people, and some of the old people could be my parents. They're old enough to be my parents. And I'm nowhere near a spring chicken, but they're old enough to be my parents. And when they're old enough to be my parents, they have a really disconnect with the average household in the state of New Hampshire. And what I'm going to do is I've got some numbers. The population under 5 from 2000 to 2010, okay, under 5 minus 6,000, 5 to 17 minus 17,000, 18 to 24 plus 20,000, 25 to 44 minus 57,000, 45 to 64 plus 110,000, and 65 and up plus 31,000. This is the population change in the state of New Hampshire over the last 10 years. 23,000 less children. Basically, statewide, when you look at it, the state of New Hampshire, we've been losing 2,300 kids a year. Or school-age children, 1,700 school-age children each year have disappeared from the state. 18 to 24, there's 20,000. Some of that's a little distorted because some of those are college kids that come here and they register as residents, and some of them stay for a year or two after they finish college. But here it is, the 25 to 44, the most productive, the big one, the ones that create families. 57,000 of them less in 2010 compared to 2000. So basically almost 6,000 25 to 44-year-olds have been leaving the state of New Hampshire since 2000. Yeah, you can argue that, say, some of these have aged into here, but I would say not very many. But from 45 to 64, basically 110,000 people more, 45 to 64 in New Hampshire. 65 and above, 31,000 people. And so what's happening when you go 45 to over 45, it's 141,000 new people in the state of New Hampshire over the last 10 years. And when you go to the State House, my first year in the State House, it was 207 that were 65 to 74, and 77 that were 75 and above. So 284 out of 400. New Hampshire has the oldest legislator in the, by age in the country. It also has the highest percentage of legislators that were not born in the state of New Hampshire. Yep. I was not born in the state of New Hampshire, so I'm one of those that were out. But over 50% of the legislators in the state of New Hampshire were born outside of New Hampshire. And a lot of them are in this group right here. They retire from Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York. They come up to New Hampshire, New Jersey. They come up to New Hampshire. They don't have to pay sales tax. They don't have to pay income tax. They don't have to pay death tax. All they have to do is they don't have to pay tax on their retirement. So they're coming into New Hampshire, and so what they do is then for $100 a year, they get to go in and become a member of the State House, where these people, they're leaving because they can't find jobs, and it's in New Hampshire, it's such a high cost that people, our legislators, are moving into the state to become legislators. And what does this mean? Guess what? A lot of these people, when they move in, they don't have any children here. They don't have any grandchildren in school. They look at the school and say, wait a minute, my school taxes are going way up. Why should I have to fund education? These are the people that will go and say, I don't believe in donut towns. I didn't get an education in New Hampshire. I don't have kids going to school, so why should I have to pay into the state education fund to help people in Keene or Winchester, Swansea, or Marlborough? And so that's one of the reasons why the Keene rate keeps going higher and higher. And so there's another one that will be a little depressing. For people 15 to 24, 1,000 new houses. 25 to 34, 11,000. Oh, these are down. 35 to 44, 22,000. Now, 45 to 54, 21,000. 55 to 64, 40,000. And 65 and up, 21,000. This is houses. This is change in household by age in New Hampshire from head of household from 2000 to 2010. So 15 to 24, okay, there's 1,000 less households in the state of New Hampshire that's head by someone 15 to 24. And so that is, that's a small drop. 25 to 34, the ones that put children in our school, it's gone down 11,000 over 10 years. 35 to 44, gone down 22,000 over the last 10 years. And this is from if this was prepared by the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. This is why it's having such a negative effect on the quality of housing, where the housing is being located at. Okay, 45 to 54, 21,000 new houses. 55 to 64, again, a lot of the people from out of state coming in. So when you, give me. So when you look at 55 and up, excuse me, over the last 10 years, 61,000 new households were created by this group of people. 61,000, basically 6,100 a year are created by people 55 and older. And as other people say, the fastest growing housing area in the state of New Hampshire is 55 and older. These 55 and older communities. No children, again, they don't want to pay school taxes because they don't have any connection. These are, in a lot of cases, not all, they'll come in and they'll have nice areas. They're the ones who will say, you know, we want to put everything in conservation. We want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do that. And in some of the problem that we're having here in New Hampshire is putting stuff in conservation, or conservation easements are really good and they're really valuable and it's important to keep green space. But in a lot of areas, by putting stuff into, where they're putting so much stuff into conservation easement, it's causing the local property tax rate to go up, and it's actually reducing the amount of land for businesses to build, to grow, or for people to build new houses. So that's a catch. It's catching people. Again, these are the group that you're going to see up in the State House. This is the group you're going to see in here. And so there's the, let's see, we got the other one. Employment. From 1970 to 80, employment went up 49%. 1980 to 90, it went up 34%. 1990 to 2000, it went up 27%. 2000 to 2010, it went down 0.6%. Again, you can see why, especially the 24 to 34, that group is leaving the state. 30 up to 45, they're leaving the state. There is no job growth. There hasn't been any job growth in the state of New Hampshire in the last 10 years. And what it's doing is no job growth. Look at that. Look at the drop-off. 1970 and 1980, plain and simple, basically 50%, so average about 5% a year. 1980 and 1990, even when we had the recessions and stuff, it was still over 3% a year. 1990 to 2000, still 2.5% growth a year. Basically, on an average right now, we have not had no growth. We haven't had any growth in the state of New Hampshire on jobs in the past 10 years. And this is really distorted because even according to the New Hampshire Department of Labor, the number of high-paying manufacturing jobs is continuously dropping. These jobs, the reason this number is so high, negative 0.6, is because we got the big box stores. We have the McDonald's, the Walmarts, the Wendy's, restaurants, all low-paying wage jobs. Restaurant workers, hotel, hospitality, they're jobs, but the income has dropped off drastically. And the population, okay, from New Hampshire, 2000 to 2010. Let's see if this other one works better. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I already did this one, so. Okay, here's the, in 1980, The U.S., median U.S. was 30 years old. New England was 31.2, and New Hampshire was 30.2. Today, the United States is 37.2, New England is 40, and New Hampshire is 41.1. Basically, again, when you start looking at all the, that's probably not come very clear. The United States in 1980, basically in the 30 years, the median age in United States has gone from 30 to 37.2, an increase of 7.2 years over the last 30 years. New England was 31.2 and gone up to 40, increase of 8.8. New Hampshire was 30.2, one of the youngest ones in New England, and was pretty close to the U.S. average. But now New Hampshire is 41.1, going up 10.9. Again, these are all having negative effects. They have serious consequences on your tax structure, your school system, all kinds of stuff. For example, when we had one right here for Cheshire County. Cheshire County underage, basically about 17.5% of the Cheshire County is under the age of 18. Statewide, the median age is 21.5%. As far as over 65, there's places in Cheshire County where it's over 20%, but in most cases, Cheshire County is 14 to 17%. Statewide median of 65 is 13%. And so what does that do? Because we have such a low number of children under 18, that's why we're seeing a drop off in our elementary school age, middle school, the high school. The high school is down about 300 students over the last 3 to 4 years. The elementary school has a little blip. The middle school has some, is up, but it's nowhere near where we thought it was, or fill the capacity of the new middle school. And we have new kids coming in to help fill those empty seats. But when I go put the county hat on, because Cheshire County is one of the oldest counties in the state of New Hampshire, and because we're also one of the poorer counties in the state of New Hampshire, our nursing home is being over-inundated with people that need to get into a nursing facility. And right now, I think this year we're going to spend about we're going to be about $4.5 million in the red for the nursing home. That's where everyone in the county has to pick up, which means the people of Keene have to pay about $1 million extra in taxes to cover the deficit in the nursing home. There's a bunch of research and study going in the nursing home. The nursing home is old. It may get to the point that we can't afford to repair the nursing home. And what are we going to do with the nursing home? We're going to come up with $40, $50 million more to build a new nursing home. If we do, where do we build a new nursing home? Some people say build a new nursing home in Keene. Well, if you build a new nursing home in Keene, doesn't that take property off the tax rolls? And so then people would say, wait a minute, would that be an unfair burden to the Keene taxpayers if they're paying almost 30%? Then we would have to take all that property off the tax rolls. The question is, can the county going forward afford a nursing home? And what would the future be with the nursing home? If the county gets out of the nursing home business, where do all the people in the nursing home go? Because when you look at the Medicare, Medicaid rate, it's much lower than the private nursing homes. And so I think, unfortunately, we're getting a lot of Medicaid and Medicare people dumped on the county instead of being picked up at some of the other nursing homes. And so the taxpayers are paying twice for it. They're paying through Medicaid, and they're paying through Medicare, and through their taxes, and again, through federal taxes and state taxes. That's what it's going. It's just having such a negative effect. And so then we go to today's Keene Sentinel, which is basically November 19th, which is today. So, and on page 8, in the bottom, a lost decade for the U.S. workers. I've talked about it before, and here's the new one. Since 2002, in fact, it's effectively been a lost decade for workers. Equally troubling, real wages are now about the same as they were in December 2005. Accounting for inflation and everything, the great majority of people right now, if they're lucky to have a job, are making what they made in 2005. So which means they have not seen a single penny in purchasing power in the last 7 years. And you're going to say, why is this? And why is this important? Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about the school budget and how we do funny words in government. And it goes, if you are unemployed or underemployed, that is the most important issue, he said. But if you're working and your income has gone down or you haven't had a wage increase in a number of years, that problem is a bigger issue for you. And this was a chief economist at the New York Office of Bureau of Labor Statistics. The recession was unprecedented and stagnation of wages has really been going on for some years. In fact, real wages have been on a mostly downward slope for more than 40 years. Researchers at the Hamilton Project, part of the center-left research center for the Brooklyn Institute, recently calculated that the median working man with a job earns about 4% less than when he adjusted for inflation than he did in 1970. The median, 4%. So here we are in 42 years. So basically, if I was 18, say I had a job in 1970 at 18, and I lucked out and I started right in the middle. So I started right at management, and I worked for 40 years, 42 years, and I'm getting ready. I'd be 60 years old. In those 42 years, after I take inflation and all that stuff out, I'd have 4% less purchasing power than I did after 42 years of working. And not only that, back then, chances are I didn't have to pay into my retirement. There was no such thing as a 401 or an IRA. Chances are I didn't have to pay any deductible or any copay into my medical. That was covered by the company, or if anything. So now I could be paying thousands. It's not unusual. For example, I know someone who works and offered to get basic health care at a local company. It was $94 for family. It was $94 a week, $400 a month, $5,000 a year. And so when you go in and take not only inflation, but when you take all these other costs, then the average American is hurting. But again, this is where the government can use the statistics to misinform or misdirect. The numbers look better for women, but they tell a different story since women historically numbered fewer in the workforce and earn less than for the farther back you go. So because women started way behind, they go in and they're catching up. But because they're catching up, it makes them look like they're doing better. And yeah, they're doing better, but they're still behind. And it's they haven't made the same kind of really growth either, because Another thing, a lot of households are headed by single women. And so it has the same negative effect. But the misdirection is when people go and say, hey, this is what's been happening, households are holding their own. The reason households are holding their own is because of all the women who are now working. When you look at the amount of women that were working in 1970 and compare them to 2012, there's a heck of a lot of women working in 2012 just so their families could stay at 1970, 1975 purchasing power position. If not, if these women were not working in these two wage earner income households, these families would never have stayed in the middle class as long as they did. They're falling out now, but they would have dropped out drastically. And now when one of them retire, they're falling out of the middle class because the money isn't there. And so I will finish up with the headline right here. School budget could cut $1.6 million. School budget could cut $1.6 million. And how is $1.6 million cut? It goes, the last week's Keene Board of Education passed the budget guideline of $62,171,120, a 0.5% increase over 2012-2013. And so the guidance was an increase of $309,309 over last year. And so what it's saying, and we had a $2+ million surplus, and then we added an extra $300,000. And it's only in government way that ends up with a $1.6 million cut. Yes, expenses have gone up. The voters voted for the new contracts, okay? And because of the new contracts, the voters were told that there were going to be costs for the new contracts. We knew health care was going up. It's going up a little bit more than we thought, but it's still going up. We knew it was going up. We knew the New Hampshire retirement portion was going up. Those we knew, plain and simple. And if you know it's going up and you got to pay for it, that's not a budget cut. That means you have to prioritize what do you want us to do to raise the budget by $2.2 million, quote unquote, then people can say that's a level funding. Well, that's for the voters to decide, but that's the way government works. We increase it by $309,000, but actually it's a $1.6 million cut. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end with a surprise. I'm going to, the individual who sees it will see it. And what we'll do is we're going to have a little 58th wedding anniversary for two of our local Keene residents. So happy anniversary, Gus and Lee. And I'll see you out on the long road and have a great Thanksgiving.
before